Pets are often cherished as symbols of comfort and companionship. But what happens when your beloved pet is a predator, an animal whose instincts are deeply tied to the wild? In a split second, that sense of security can shatter, replaced by something far more dangerous. The peril of trusting the untamed. Pets are often symbols of comfort and love. But what happens when your pet is a predator, an animal whose instincts are rooted in the wild? For Kellyanne Waltz, this became a haunting reality. The bond she shared with her black bear, Teddy, was built on trust and affection. Yet, in a single, harrowing moment, that bond was shattered. It was October 4, 2009, in Ross Township, Pennsylvania. The crisp morning air and golden sunlight painted an idyllic scene as Kellyanne and her husband, Michael, tended to their collection of exotic animals. For over 15 years, they'd cared for lions, tigers, leopards, and a towering black bear named Teddy. Their dedication inspired awe, with neighbors marveling at their sanctuary-like property. But even with years of experience, the question lingered: how secure is trust when wild instincts lurk beneath the surface? Teddy was an imposing figure, over 6 feet tall on his hind legs and weighing 350 pounds. Despite his sheer power, he seemed playful, even gentle. He loved popcorn and greeted Kellyanne eagerly as she approached his enclosure. For her, Teddy was more than a pet, he embodied her lifelong passion for animals. But that passion would soon lead to a devastating tragedy. Kellyanne had raised Teddy from a cub, mastering a delicate balance between affection and respect for his strength. She was a seasoned exotic animal keeper and an active member of her community, known for her meticulous care. Yet, as autumn deepened and Teddy's instincts sharpened, subtle warning signs emerged. On that fateful Sunday, Kellyanne's routine seemed no different. With her children nearby, she prepared to clean Teddy's cage, relying on her tried-and-true method, distracting him with food. As he devoured his meal, she entered the enclosure with a wheelbarrow and shovel, confident in their bond. But in an instant, everything changed. Without warning, Teddy turned his attention to Kellyanne. In a single, swift motion, he lunged, his massive weight slamming into her. His powerful jaws clamped onto her shoulder with terrifying force. Her children screamed in horror as the attack unfolded. A neighbor, Scott, rushed to retrieve his firearm. By the time he returned, Teddy had inflicted catastrophic injuries. Scott fired multiple shots, eventually bringing the bear down. But it was too late, Kellyanne's life had been tragically cut short. The aftermath was a scene of devastation. Emergency responders could only confirm Kellyanne's death. Teddy, too, succumbed to his wounds, a stark reminder of the perilous line between human care and wild instinct. The tragedy raised urgent questions. Why wasn't there a secondary barrier for cleaning? How were signs of agitation overlooked? Despite years in captivity, Teddy's primal instincts had surfaced with lethal consequences. The Waltz property, once seen as a model of safety, now stood as a chilling example of the unpredictability of wild predators. Scrutiny soon followed. Michael's license to house exotic animals had expired the year prior, further complicating the situation. Neighbors defended the family's dedication, but experts emphasized an unsettling truth: no amount of care can fully suppress the instincts of wild animals. Kellyanne's story became a rallying cry for stricter safety regulations. It underscored the dangers of treating wild predators as domestic companions and left a haunting question: is true coexistence with such creatures possible? As we grapple with these questions, Kellyanne's tragic fate serves as a stark reminder of the powerful instincts that define wild animals, instincts that can turn even the most trusted bonds into moments of unimaginable peril. Here's the rewritten script. The untamable truth, a tragic clash of instinct and innocence. In South Africa, a devastating encounter between humanity and nature left a family shattered and a community forever haunted. The tragic death of a 12-year-old boy, Christian Tiaan Prinsloo, serves as a stark reminder of the perilous balance between humans and wild animals. It was April 2017, and Tiaan was on school break, visiting his grandmother's rural home near Lephalale, South Africa. The countryside was his sanctuary, a place of sprawling fields, close-knit communities, and occasional glimpses of wildlife. Tiaan loved his time there, especially visiting a nearby lion breeding farm owned by family friends, the Vos couple. The Vos farm was home to 3 majestic lions, raised in captivity but never truly tamed. Despite secure enclosures and attentive care, the primal instincts of these predators remained just beneath the surface. On an otherwise unremarkable day, Tiaan and his grandmother, Marie Strydom, visited the Vos farm. The lions had already completed their daily routine, roaming the property under supervision before being returned to their enclosures. But unknown to anyone, a gate had been left improperly latched. While Marie and Mrs. Vos chatted in the kitchen, Tiaan wandered the house, likely searching for his favorite book. Suddenly, the massive silhouette of a lion appeared in the doorway. The beast had escaped its enclosure, and its instincts now ruled. Marie acted swiftly, placing herself between Tiaan and the lion, urging him to run. But as Tiaan turned to flee, the lion's predatory instincts took over. With terrifying speed, it pounced, its claws digging into Tiaan's small frame and its powerful jaws locking onto him. Marie fought valiantly, grabbing the lion's mane and screaming for help. Her desperate efforts briefly distracted the animal, allowing Mrs. Vos to intervene and subdue it. The damage, however, was catastrophic. Marie, despite her own injuries, carried her grandson to the car and rushed him to the nearest hospital. The 20-minute drive was a race against time, but by the time they arrived, Tiaan's injuries were critical. His spine was severely damaged, and his breathing labored. Tiaan was airlifted to Pretoria for advanced care, but even with the best efforts of doctors, his condition remained dire. For 3 weeks, he lay in a coma as his family maintained a constant vigil. On April 26, just a day after his 12th birthday, Tiaan succumbed to his injuries. The lion, despite the attack, was spared. The Prinsloo family chose not to press charges against the Vos couple, acknowledging that the lion had acted on instinct, not malice. Instead, they insisted the animal be relocated to a more secure sanctuary where it could live out its days far from human interaction. This tragedy underscores an unsettling truth: no amount of care, training, or familiarity can fully suppress the primal instincts of wild animals. The Vos family had taken every precaution, but a single oversight unleashed a deadly chain of events. For the Prinsloo family, the loss of Tiaan is a wound that will never heal. Yet, their decision to protect the lion reflects a profound understanding of nature's unpredictability. By choosing compassion over vengeance, they honored Tiaan's love for animals, even in their darkest hour. This heartbreaking incident is a sobering reminder that nature remains untamable. It challenges us to rethink how we coexist with wild creatures, recognizing that even with the best intentions, the line between man and beast is one we cross at our own peril. A deadly obsession, the tragic tale of Ronald Huff and his monitor lizards. Our next story takes us to Newark, Delaware, where Ronald Huff's passion for his 7 monitor lizards ended in a grisly and unforgettable tragedy. It was January 16, 2002, a bitter winter day, when an ominous, putrid stench began wafting through the Ridgewood Manor apartments. The odors seeped from Ronald Huff's unit, alarming his neighbors and compelling Jeff Wong to investigate. What he found revealed the dark reality of living alongside dangerous exotic animals. Ronald Huff, a 42-year-old former soldier, was disciplined yet reclusive, devoting his life to a unique obsession: his Nile monitor lizards. These enormous reptiles, some stretching up to 6 feet, roamed freely in his small apartment. For Ronald, they weren't just pets, they were family. Known to his co-workers as Lizard Boy, Ronald spoke fondly of his scaly companions, often showing off the scratches and bites he'd endured while handling them. But even his colleagues couldn't have imagined the grim events that were about to unfold. Nile monitors are powerful, predatory reptiles with razor-sharp teeth and venomous bites. In the wild, they are ruthless hunters. But Ronald, enamored by their prehistoric allure, raised them with care and allowed them unrestricted access to his home. They lounged in his bedroom, slithered across his kitchen counters, and even ate at his dining table. Yet beneath this peculiar bond lay an undeniable truth: no amount of affection could erase their wild instincts. For days leading up to January 16th, neighbors hadn't seen Ronald, but the overpowering smell from his apartment hinted at something horrifying. Police were called, and when they forced open his door, the scene they discovered was beyond imagination. The air was thick with the stench of decay. Ronald's lifeless body lay slumped against the door, mutilated and disfigured. His arms, legs, and torso bore deep wounds where flesh had been torn away, exposing bone. His face was barely recognizable. Around him, his 7 lizards hissed and flicked their blood-stained tongues, unperturbed by the chaos. The apartment was a chaotic mess. Overturned furniture and scattered remnants of raw chicken and cockroach shells littered the floor. The lizards' powerful tails swept through the debris, and their sharp claws scratched against the hardwood. One of the larger monitors hovered near Ronald's body, its posture almost defensive. For the officers, the reptiles weren't just animals, they were active threats, guarding what they seemed to consider their kill. It took hours for wildlife officials to capture the lizards. The largest among them resisted violently, requiring specialized equipment to subdue it. Once secured, the lizards were removed, but the haunting image of the scene lingered in the minds of those who witnessed it. An autopsy revealed the extent of Ronald's injuries. Large portions of flesh were missing, consistent with bites from the monitor's sharp teeth. Deep lacerations and claw marks suggested either an aggressive attack or post-mortem scavenging. Defensive wounds on his hands and arms implied a struggle had taken place. Though the exact cause of death was unclear, the injuries were severe enough to be fatal if inflicted while he was alive. Whether Ronald died from the lizard's aggression or succumbed to natural causes before they began scavenging, one truth was undeniable: the untamed nature of his so-called companions had surfaced in the most brutal way. Ronald Huff's story is a chilling reminder of the dangers inherent in keeping exotic predators. No matter how much one might love or care for them, wild animals remain governed by instinct, capable of turning in an instant. This tragedy raises pressing questions. Why are such dangerous creatures allowed in private homes? Can human devotion ever truly overcome wild instinct? And what happens when these exotic animals aren't confined to an apartment but instead set loose to prowl freely in the night? In Ohio, a man's decision to unleash his collection of lions, tigers, and bears on a quiet community would answer that question with devastating carnage. The Zanesville Massacre, a predator's night unleashed. As the sun set on October 18, 2011, in Zanesville, Ohio, an unimaginable nightmare unfolded. One man's desperate act transformed a peaceful town into a war zone of fear and bloodshed. Terry Thompson, a Vietnam veteran consumed by turmoil, opened the gates to chaos, releasing a deadly horde of exotic predators. Viewer discretion is advised. The details of this tragedy are as harrowing as they are unforgettable. For years, Thompson had been a collector of the extraordinary, amassing lions, tigers, bears, and wolves on his sprawling 73-acre property. What began in 1977 with the purchase of a lion cub for his wife spiraled into an obsession. By 2011, his land housed 56 exotic animals, often in cramped, unsanitary conditions. Despite neighbors' concerns about inadequate enclosures and frequent escapes, Ohio's lax regulations allowed Thompson to continue unchecked. His animals were both his passion and his undoing. Prison time in 2008 on firearms charges marked the beginning of Thompson's decline. His finances were in tatters, his mental health unraveling, and his marriage strained by paranoia and distrust. As personal pressures mounted, Thompson seemed to reach a breaking point. On that fateful evening, his actions would plunge Zanesville into chaos. In the waning light, neighbors first noticed something strange. Horses in nearby paddocks, usually calm, were frantic, snorting and pacing. Sam Kopchak, a neighbor and experienced horseman, approached to investigate. To his horror, he saw not just one predator, but two, a massive black bear lumbering near the fence and, just beyond, a fully grown African lion. Frozen in terror, he led his horse into the barn, locking the flimsy doors behind him, and called 911. Unbeknownst to anyone, Thompson had spent his final hours methodically releasing his exotic animals. Using wire cutters, he freed dozens of lions, tigers, bears, and wolves from their enclosures, scattering raw chicken to lure them out. His final act was grim. Thompson stepped into his yard and ended his own life with a gunshot, leaving his property a hunting ground for some of the deadliest predators on Earth. When officers arrived, the scene was surreal. In the fading light, lions prowled the driveway, tigers slinked through the grass, and wolves darted across fields. The predators had already begun to roam beyond Thompson's property, venturing into residential areas. Calls poured into 911. A motorist swerved to avoid a black bear. A soccer coach evacuated children after spotting a tiger near the field. The danger was immediate and inescapable. Police were left with a gut-wrenching decision: protect lives or attempt the near-impossible task of capturing these powerful animals. Tranquilizers were unavailable, and even if they had been, the delayed effect and the chaos of night made their use impractical. The order was clear: shoot to kill. By dawn, the carnage was evident. Of the 50 animals Thompson had released, 48 were dead, their bodies strewn across roads, fields, and the property. The two survivors, a monkey and a grizzly bear, remained caged and were safely removed. For law enforcement, the grim task of neutralizing predators at close range would leave scars that lingered long after the crisis ended. Inside Thompson's home, officers found a microcosm of his fractured mind, disorder, decay, and years of neglect. The question remained: why had he done it? What drove a man to unleash such destruction, bringing death not only to himself but to the animals he claimed to love and the community he terrorized? The tragedy of Zanesville serves as a chilling warning about the dangers of keeping exotic animals. These powerful creatures belong in their natural habitats, not behind makeshift fences or in private homes. Terry Thompson's breakdown and the massacre it caused reveal the devastating consequences when human obsession meets the untamed wild. The bloodshed in Zanesville will forever stand as a haunting reminder: some boundaries are not meant to be crossed.